I don't care if it's old Bristol, you pour dirt on Bristol, or we race on snowflake crystals. Lakers in 5. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Grid Encore. If you get that reference, you're a real one. My name's Ben Schneider, and I'm joined, as always, by Brandon Crossland. Brandon, how's it going tonight?
It's going in a different vibe now that we got that. I like the pre-scripted stuff, and well, I'm just going to give you credit and say it wasn't pre-scripted. Way to go, Ben! And also, it's another Motor Monday. Let's kick it up a notch and talk about Bristol.
I did think of that earlier this morning as I was watching.
I figured so.
Yes. Yeah, didn't come up with that on the fly, but a little Shannon Sharp reference for you all as we get started here. But as I said, welcome to the show. Lots of stuff to talk about here this week. Of course, NASCAR was at Bristol, and very mixed reaction, I think. And that's probably being generous. I think it's largely negative reaction of a cup race. And since neither of us were on the wrap-up show yesterday, that's what we'll start with here in just a moment. Of course, we had Xfinity and trucks as well. Kyle Larson, once again, going 2 for 3 in his quest to become the second driver ever to win all 3 races on the same weekend. And Formula 2 and Formula 3 were also back in action in Bahrain. We have a special guest joining us later in the show to talk about those as well. But before we get into all of that, as always, I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Michelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you so much for continuing to invest in the Grid Network. And if you like what you see this evening and you want to consider joining them and helping us continue to expand our coverage here at this network, we would truly appreciate it. The link to our Patreon is in the description box below, as is our Buy Me a Coffee if you'd rather make a one-time contribution to us instead, or if you're watching us live here on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature as well. Now, Brandon, as I mentioned, very negative reaction, I think, to what we got yesterday in the Cup Series race. I know last year we had a tremendous tire wear, really making it a popular race with unpredictability, and people calling it one of the best short track races we've seen in a long time, certainly in the next gen era. We thought we might see that after practice this week, but ultimately the temperatures were warmer. On Sunday, the sun was out, and the tire wear simply was not to the degree that it was at in practice. Kyle Larson absolutely dominated, ran away with the race, and I think the Jeff Gluck, was it a good race poll right now, is maybe at 2080, yes. If we're lucky right now, it's probably even a couple of percentage points lower than that. Last I checked, 18 or 19%, saying it was a good race. The vast majority of race fans saying they were disappointed by the short track product here in the next gen era once again. So, Brandon, I'll turn it over to you first. What were your thoughts on the kind of racing that we saw this weekend? Do you think this is a car problem, a Bristol problem, a Cup Series problem, all of the above? What's going on with Bristol?
I'm really not one to say, but as a matter of fact, I was covering the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach during yesterday's Bristol Food City 500. So, but I have seen the bits and pieces that I need to see to know what's been happening to Bristol, I guess. And looking at last year's spring race being such a hit, bringing you back to concrete and being on tires that just went to shreds. Of course, that's not a long-term solution, but it provided a really captivating race last spring. And then we found out that going to the night race, the Bass Pro Shops night race at Bristol, that it was going to be back nothing like it was for spring. And so we got that, and we got a ho-hum race, and we come back to the spring. These tires aren't falling off, and so we've got a ho-hum race, but we've got the best of the best dominating the field, and that's Kyle Larson putting a spanking on the entire field. So, I mean, that's what happened. He almost got the full weekend sweep had it not been for Chandler Smith there in the Craftsman Truck Series on Friday. But he very well could have taken the entire weekend. I don't want to say it's a car problem, because we see other places on the calendar where it does very well, but it feels like it's more of a tire thing. But it's certainly not the best thing in the world to have your Gluck poll say an 80-20. That's definitely not good news. But I did not participate in this Gluck poll because I felt like I wasn't qualified to be weighing in on it. But I've seen this movie before. The last year's night race at Bristol was a snoozer, and Kyle Larson being the dominator. There's a reason though I think the blame really needs to be set, I guess, on the track, because you look back at how it was before the progressive banking was set there, and changing how the top uh, uh, behaves with the cars. It's not the Bristol that it was that they're trying to throw back to, certainly. So it's a very different animal, and so um, there's a reason that crowds dwindled on the spring date, and they had to move it to one event. And there's also a reason that we decided to put dirt on it for a few years, and that was kind of at the beginning, but it got better as it went on, and then we went back to concrete how we are now. And it was a hit last year, so we come to this year and you get this. So it's a mix of a lot of things is my final answer. But what are you thinking?
Well, I don't know. And I think that's kind of the problem that we have as race fans all the time. It's the stereotype, I think, is that NASCAR fans don't know what they want. And I've got to confess here that I'm kind of in that boat right now, because after last year's race, I was like, guys, texting my friends, like, if you didn't watch the race, like watch the highlights, watch the full replay if you can. This was the best race I've seen in years. And thinking, like, why did we ever pour dirt on this place? This was a throwback to, the great place that Bristol is, the great racing that we see here. And here I am a year later, and I'm like, you know what? Why did we stop putting dirt on Bristol? It was a novelty. It was a new event. It diversifies the schedule. I don't know. I mean, I see Nicholas's comment here. NASCAR needs to give drivers more horsepower. I mean, that's a drum that I will continue to bang for until the end of time here. I
Big
think
motor, small blade.
Yeah, exactly. So they need to do that, or you're going to see more of this, and Bristol might lose a date. That's another part of the conversation. And again, that would have been unthinkable even, I think, 5 or 10 years ago. Bristol going down to one date. But again, I will just say for the record here, and if you're a regular viewer of the show, you might know, but I hold this opinion. NASCAR is one of the very few motorsports, at least pre-pandemic. I know some places have adopted, double headers and, then doubled up on venues to just try to get their complete schedules in. And some places have maybe held on to that. But one of the very few series that I can think of that goes to tracks more than once a year. So if you ask me, a perfect NASCAR schedule, if I were king for a day, as Ricky Craven said last year, if I ruled the world for a day, I would say the NASCAR schedule should be 28 to 32 races at 28 to 32 unique tracks. The one exception I would be willing to give is Daytona, because I think the place is big enough in terms of NASCAR history, and B, the summer race itself, the Firecracker 400 has enough of a tradition on it to stand on its own there. I don't think we need to get rid of that date, but I would say the caveat to that would be, if you are going to go to a venue twice, do something different. So if that's Charlotte, you say, you want to be at, the team's home track, so to speak, in the NASCAR hub twice a year, then keep running the Roval. That's not very popular of an opinion, I think, of an next-gen era, considering we've seen better racing at intermediates and road courses. But again, in a perfect world where the racing was great at all tracks right now, I would say that would be my take if you're going to go to Charlotte twice a year. And I would say for Bristol, how could you make the racing different? Have a dirt race in the spring and then have a night race be the fifth crown jewel, if you will, the biggest non-crown jewel race perhaps on the schedule. There's obviously great tradition and great fanfare around the Bristol night race. I don't think that's an event that's going to fall off the calendar anytime soon. But I will just say that if this continues to be the reaction, if we continue to see the crowd sizes dwindle at Bristol spring race, how much longer can you justify giving this track 2 dates on the schedule? I think it's a question that needs to be asked, because we cannot continue to go back here with fans, and especially what happened this weekend. It was very unfortunate because people were expecting that we'd see something similar to what we saw last year after practice. And then obviously we got quite a bit of a dud in the race. When there's so much hype and so much anticipation, and you get a race like that, it's just a massive letdown.
It's the kind of track where you like, don't stop showing me highlights of 1998. Stop showing me 2002. You can't keep relying on your that far away past to keep selling tickets for 26. Like that's not going to keep, that formula is not going to keep working forever if you can't prove that you're still the last great Coliseum. And I love Bristol Motor Speedway. That was my wife's first true NASCAR experience several years back, and we had an awesome time. It was 2019. It was watching Matt DiBenedetto try to hold off Denny Hamlin and vice versa. That was, I mean, Eric Estep said it best yesterday. He said Bristol Motor Speedway is in a very temperamental state right now. It's a temperamental kind of track where there's some, like, you don't know we don't know currently what we're going to get each time we come there. There's going to be some days where, wow, that was awesome. This is why we like Bristol. And then you get one like yesterday where it's like, what? Oh, this track. Why did they mess it up? Like how they massacred my boy. Like, it used to be so great. Like, and like the way, and they're right, the way that Bristol used to be in the early 2000s, late 90s, it was whenever they'd come off the banking, it would just kind of, it wasn't, the non-progressive banking, it kind of judged you back in to those straightaways. It was very unique in that way. It wasn't so clean of a transition to the bankings. It probably took the drivers for a jerk. It probably know that much, but yeah, I mean, when I want to see Bristol, sadly, I still go back to the Sharpie 500 and go see what that old surface used to look like. I mean, they can put dirt on the whole place. Surely they can, SMI or someone can take a look at this if they wanted to, and retroact the surface. I mean, why did they go away from this surface in the first place? I guess is my other detective question. I couldn't tell you I don't know my Bristol history, like pinpointing the year that they switched to progressive banking. Was like 2007?
It was 07. Yeah. And I remember we were talking about that in the Slack chat earlier this week. Because again, 07 is really near and dear to my heart because that was the first year I watched full time. I watched a couple of races in 06, but really got into it in 07. Watched the series, watched all 36 races, as much as I could at least. And I vividly remember that was like the in-race poll question on NASCAR and Fox. Like, are you excited for these changes that Bristol's going to be making? And it was like 45 yes, 55 no. And Darrell Waltrip said in the booth, like, that was actually a lot closer than I was expecting because of how popular Bristol is as a track in NASCAR.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was and that was weird as well because like they did it mid-season, like they did it over the summer, and we come back for the fall, and I still remember ESPN was broadcasting that race. They have the TV rights for the second or last third of the schedule, I guess. TNT didn't have as much of a block as Fox and ESPN did at the time, but the third network to come in at that point in the season, regardless. And I think the race was relatively clean by Bristol standards at the time. I mean, not as clean as we saw this weekend, but if I recall correctly, I think Casey Kane might have been on pole, and we ran like the first 100-something laps under green, and everybody was like, when are we going to get that first caution? How have we not stacked somebody up yet? So it was evident right away that the racing that we were seeing was different, and the top line was, now a preferred line in a way that it hadn't been before. And, it's just, again, I don't know if it was necessarily, and again, I wasn't on, of course, Twitter was in its infancy, and I certainly wasn't on social media as a 9 or 10-year-old, but, I don't remember watching those races in 08, 09, 10 or whatever and thinking like, man, that first Bristol race was so great and this is absolute garbage. I wish they never changed it back. I think there's a lot of variables that go into the reaction that we got this weekend. And I think it's certainly debatable. Obviously, you look at Richmond and Martinsville, and I think you can say the next gen era has not produced great races on the short tracks.
Still the weak link.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you can look at that. You can also look at, the rules package that we're using, from track to track. And, is it a engine package issue? Is it a fundamental issue of a next gen car? I think what you have to acknowledge, though, is that a large portion of your fan base is not happy and has valid concerns. And again, I hate to throw him under the bus, but when I hear Pete Pistone on the morning drive today talk about how his Chicago Cubs beat the LA Dodgers 16-0, and that's a bit of a snooze fest for neutral baseball fans that want to see a competitive game. And he says, well, MLB is not going back to the drawing board on how to fix baseball. I just don't know how that's a relevant analogy there, because that's one individual game where one team was much stronger than the other on that particular day. And I understand that.
Yeah, and baseball is a whole different animal with starting your pitchers and who's in your bullpen, who comes up next. Like
there are so many
changes from night to night. Yeah,
so many variables that you have to use to get to that situation over in baseball. I think the only comparison that can really be made is one team, in this case, one driver in NASCAR, was dominant. But like, of course, the 16-0 baseball game didn't happen because there was a fundamental issue with the baseballs or the bats being used or the size of the bags or what, like variables like that go into, how good is the quality of racing in NASCAR. You've got, the car to think about and the temperatures of a track and all sorts of things that vary from weekend to weekend. I think trying to make that stick and ball sport comparison there is, a bit of a fool's errand, especially when you have this much of the fan base saying that we have a problem here. And again, it just comes back to the idea of, turning a blind eye to our faults here and saying like, well, actually, if you look past the leader, there was a lot of great racing there. Maybe some of that's on Fox for not showing us more battles throughout the field here, but I
would
don't
typically lean on that. That's probably a part of the issue that he didn't get to see the rest of the field. But
there's a lot of different layers to this onion that you can keep peeling back. But again, I think it's not unreasonable to suggest that we have an issue and we need to work on trying to find a solution when this much of the fan base is reacting so negatively, and has been reacting so negatively for several years now to the products that a track that was once, I think, a top 5 for sure, fan favorite on the schedule, has kind of fallen down that list in recent years. And the fact that we're at a point now where, fans aren't looking forward to coming back to short tracks. The more short tracks,
that's not good.
Cry that we were getting during the Gen 6 era is really falling by the wayside. And again, I don't know if that's just because, the Gen 6 intermediate package wasn't great and they focused so much on preparing the next gen car to race better on those tracks that the short track package suffered for it. I don't know if there's any validity to that hypothesis there, but I mean, again, I look at what we saw. I mean, I got to be honest. It was tempting to switch over to Long Beach. You had the Masters going on, which I know is that might put a dip in the TV rating this weekend. So that was tough for NASCAR to go up against that. Really don't understand why Fox and NASCAR and IndyCar couldn't work together better to start the Cup race at 1 and then Long Beach come on at 4:30 so that there's less, if any, overlap between the two races there. It was a little strange actually hearing the Fox booth say like, after the NASCAR Cup race, tune into IndyCar when IndyCar was already like a third of the way over or halfway into the race at that point. But again, that's a discussion for another day in terms of those logistics. I think the biggest issue right now is trying to fix the short track product in this sport, and particularly at Bristol, because again, I don't think we can go back in the fall for the night race and get a product like this and expect the majority of the fan base to be satisfied with what they're seeing.
No, and I think Kyle Larson's already your winner for the fall race. I mean, why not?
No, wouldn't bet against him, yeah. Nicholas also adding, when it comes to Bristol, the 05 and 02 and 08 night races. Yeah, well, there you go. But 08, again, that's the COT
progressive
on the reconfiguration. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I don't know how much of it is the track necessarily. I mean, and I don't know what you would do, because, I mean, you could talk about trying to go back to the old configuration, or you could, like, there was a time where it was asphalt, right? Like, I mean, concrete versus asphalt's another part of a debate that
Dale Jr. I know Dale Jr. is on the asphalt side of that equation.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, he watches a lot of 70s races over and over again, so he's quite familiar with asphalt Bristol. That's also when it wasn't a Coliseum at all. It was just another short track, Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and I guess that's part of it too. Like, I don't know how, like, the days of course, nobody's asking, like, we need to go back to the mid 2000s when the hype was at an all-time high and the popularity was to the point where the spring race was selling out all 160,000 seats.
That's what they built all those seats for.
Yeah. I mean, that was a solution that worked at the time. I don't think we're, at least not anytime in the near future, going to get back to, being able to pack 160,000 in for the spring race to that track. But if we could at least, if we could do a little bit better with the attendance and make it not, seem like it's fallen so hard, then I don't know. I think, but again, I think the biggest thing we have to do to improve that is improve the on-track product. And it's very hard. I can only imagine how difficult it is to convince a first-time viewer of the sport or a casual fan of the sport to buy a ticket if that's the product that they're seeing on TV. And again, Fox and also Turner and Prime and NBC, to be fair, all our TV partners, CW, have a big responsibility there as well, to make sure that their product is entertaining to watch and of high enough quality. But again, there's only so much they can do to present as presenters. If the on-track product isn't that great.
The people that used to buy a bunch of tickets that maybe don't buy as many tickets anymore, I guarantee you'll get them back in some capacity if you increase the horsepower. Like if you just give in to their demands and increase the horsepower and lower the blade.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as complicated as some might think.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. Joe here in the chat saying, I think dropping Bristol to one race until there is an improvement will help. Darlington was dropped to one date, now has two. Yeah, I mean, again, that's you know where I stand on the issue of one date versus 2 dates, but I think that the tracks that do warrant 2 dates right now are certainly more your intermediates, and I mean, again, you can go into market size there and attendance and all that. That's a big part of, I think, why Homestead might not get the finale, even though there are cries for that to come back. Is how can you justify the finale here if the attendance isn't what we need it to be? So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm not a businessman. I know that there's obviously a lot that goes into decisions like that, but I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that we have a problem. When less than 20% of race fans are satisfied with the on-track product at Bristol of all places, when we're talking about clean air making such a difference at Bristol and short tracks of all places.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it's unreasonable to call that out and say something has to change. We can debate what that solution is, but if you're just going to sit here and say, like, guys dominate sometimes and, the product's actually not that bad and you guys just don't know what you want. Well, maybe we don't know exactly what we want, but we know it's not this, right? Like, we can look at this and say we've seen it. We've seen better races at this track in the not too distant past here.
And the people telling you that have seen better races at this track.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Search your thoughts. You know it to be true.
Yeah.
Like you've seen it before. You know it can be done.
All right. We'll leave it there. Certainly a conversation that's going to continue all throughout the season, I think, depending on the quality of the racing that we get here as we are now in year 4 of this next gen era. But again, I'm a little nervous for when we go back to Bristol in a few months, because I think if this is any indication, we still have a lot of work to do. Maybe need to go back to the drawing board. I don't know if you can redesign the car from the ground up, but surely there are some tweaks that can be made to try to improve the product a little bit.
Do you remember the fever dream when we had the all-star race at Bristol? Me neither. All I remember was the numbers. The biggest story was not the racing. It was the numbers slanted back and the neon. The racing was an afterthought. Chase Elliott won it. But
the whole year was I do somehow remember that. I don't know how.
Yeah.
The whole year was a fever dream. But yeah, I mean, but again, move the numbers back. That's the argument that was, I think, coming back after Darlington, right? Like, if we're gonna keep doing throwback weekend, then I don't know. We could keep talking about this for the rest of the show here, but we do have some races to cover. Brandon, I'm made the switch in our outline here. I'm actually going to go with trucks first because I don't think we have quite as much to say about that.
Yeah.
So Truck Series obviously raced Friday night. Chandler Smith, the only driver not named Kyle Larson to pull in a victory lane this weekend. We do want to just acknowledge the elephant in the room. If you've been on Twitter, you've probably seen it circulate past your feed here in the last few hours. There is an ongoing situation with Chandler Smith and his family that sounds incredibly sad, incredibly disheartening. And until we know further hard, concrete evidence from, let's just say, more highly reputable sources than a couple of people on social media posting a court document without too much context beyond that, or until it affects his Truck Series ride, we're not going to comment on it. I mean, I won't completely speak for you, Brandon, but I'm not going to go super deep into the ongoing situation until it actually impacts the on-track deal that Chandler Smith has here and his ride, if it does at all. Again, we only saw this tweet come across our feeds here in the last few hours, and to be honest, if Chandler Smith wasn't the winner this weekend, I probably wouldn't be talking about it at all, but it's kind of unavoidable. We can't sit here and talk about him winning the race at this point and just ignore it because it's out there at this point.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want to do too deep of a dive into an intensely personal situation here until it's out there even further and bigger outlets are picking up on it and becomes more of a story. So we are aware. If anybody was curious and wondering, we do know it's out there at this point. But again, aside from it just being a very sad situation, there's not really much that I want to say beyond that until we have to. So we will leave it there. But in terms of, again, the on-track product, you can congratulate Chandler Smith for doing something that the entire Xfinity field and entire Cup field couldn't do this weekend. That's beat Kyle Larson at Bristol Motor Speedway. Yeah. Corey Heim, another strong run for him in third place. Again, looking like he's the most consistent driver in the series right now. Certainly the favorite for the championship. Tyler Ankrum continuing to turn over a new leaf here and continue putting in some strong runs. Another top 5 finish, and the 2-time Truck Series champion Ben Rhodes as well. Who knows? Joey Logano has that even year thing going in the Cup Series. Could Ben Rhodes maybe go 3 out of 5 years in the Truck Series if he continues to improve upon his results here? Another top 5 finish for him as well. And we'll take you on to the second page of the results here, as you can see further down the line. Tough break for Tony Breidinger. She was fighting to stay on the lead lap there, got the free pass, and unfortunately got caught up in an incident with Stuart Friesen. Not her fault, I would say, but unfortunate deal for both those drivers nonetheless. You see Friesen down there in 27th. Frankie Muniz as well, getting caught up in an unfortunate situation with Ty Majeski and Brandon Jones at the start of the race. So all 3 of those drivers outside the top 30. Interesting situation going on with Norm Benning. Remember, Brock Beard was tweeting his radio communications. I believe he got parked for some sort of failure to obey NASCAR's orders there or whatever. So you can go back and read Brock's article for more context on that. But that's the back half of your Truck Series field. Again, Chandler Smith, your winner, the only non-Kyle Larson winner from this weekend. And that will lead us into the Xfinity Series. Not too much to say about the actual race itself. Again, it's almost to be expected when a Kyle Larson or a Kyle Busch or a Cup Series driver drops down into these lower series here. They're going to win at least as often as not, it would seem. Good day for Junior Motorsports, though. Justin Allgaier picking up a Dash for Cash, and his Junior Motorsports teammates Carson Kvapil and Sammy Smith also qualifying for the next Dash for Cash, as well as Brandon Jones rounding out the top 5 there. Jesse Love, a solid run. I guess we should shout him out a little bit as well. Of course, he made his Cup debut yesterday in the third number 33 car for Richard Childress Racing. And obviously a tough day for him. Big learning experience for him, not getting a lot of breaks, not getting a lot of cautions, obviously with how much green flag racing we saw in the Cup race on Sunday. But still a solid run for him on Saturday, nonetheless, as well as Ryan Sieg continuing to put in some strong runs for his independent family-owned operation there in 7th place. Now, Brandon, the biggest talking point for me that comes out of this weekend for Xfinity is actually comments that came out from Kyle Larson today on Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour podcast, and basically telling Harvick that he runs these races to embarrass the competition and NASCAR to an extent because they're only allowed to do 5 of these races a year now. And he went on to talk about how the drivers in the series and to his credit, to be fair, this I think is a true sentiment for many of them. They enjoy having drivers like him in the field on Saturdays on occasion because it allows them to measure themselves against the Cup champion and Cup talent. We know where I stand on this issue, Brandon. I know where you stand on the issue. I know where Brock Beard stands on the issue. But what's your reaction to Kyle Larson's comment saying that the primary reason he does these races is to embarrass the competition and in some ways embarrass the sport?
That's absolutely unhinged to me. That's just so wild that he would go on. I mean, yeah, he has the right to.
You got to give him points for honesty, at least, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. But I don't sway yay or nay in his comments, but I just think it's unhinged to me that Kyle would go on Happy Harvick.
Happy Hour. Yeah.
Harvick's Happy Hour. Yeah. I'm sorry, Kevin. Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour, which is a NASCAR on Fox program, that runs on FS1 and also on all your podcasting platforms, free plug. But yeah, I'm just absolutely shocked that he would just be so open and say that. Driver to driver, I guess it's a little more, free flowing. But again, he knows where his audience is. He knows who's listening. So, good on him for being open and honest. But yeah, just like, yeah, it's. I don't want to step my boundaries too far here, but it is wild. He's got there's some truth to it though. Making fun of NASCAR, like just saying like that your talent in the Xfinity Series is not as strong as you think it is. Like what's his point he's trying to make here? Or like that you're allowing me to run 5 races is silly? Or what do you think he's trying to say here with this statement?
That's a good question. I think that,
or that the Xfinity Series is the clearly better series, like overall. And
well, there's that argument too. I think, in some ways the quality of people have said that, going back to our open segment, the discussion is, some people are just saying, put big horsepower in the Xfinity Series car and boom, you've got your solution there.
Yeah, the Cup car. Yeah.
I don't know.
We've been saying that for a couple of years now.
Yeah, exactly right. I like what Brock Beard, my editor-in-chief over at NASCAR.info tweeted. He quoted the Harvick Happy Hour tweet and said, "I appreciate his honesty, and I'll meet it with the same. Playoff caliber Cup guys running Xfinity and truck races is poor sportsmanship. If the objective is to humble Xfinity and truck drivers, put them in some Cup races and show them how tough the big show truly is, a la what Jesse Love did this weekend, perhaps you could say." Now, I think the counter to that fans would come back with, who are defending the bushwhacking argument, is that in this charter era especially, it is more difficult than ever for teams to run an open car. And so it's tough to really ask race teams to open up their pocketbooks and at least more than a couple of times a year allow these Xfinity drivers to run the Cup races. Perhaps it's more financially feasible for Kyle Larson or Kyle Busch or, whoever decides to do it that weekend to drop down to the lower series and kind of be the professor for all the students in class, so to speak, the Xfinity and Truck Series regulars. But again, it leads to moments like this where this is 5 playoff points that could have gone to Carson Kvapil or Justin Allgaier or Series regular that just don't exist now. they straight up don't exist because a Cup Series driver not running for Series points was standing in their way and won the race instead. So
in a way, it's like not actually running a full season. It's not like running a full season championship where all the points you have available don't all get distributed.
Yeah, and it's playing a spoiler argument now because I think the amount of playoff points that the field collectively has is now less than it would be if you do the mathematics and tally up how many races we have here because, well, a Cup driver won this race, so no points are awarded now. So, again, I feel like I have always been of the mindset that either we let them run wild like we did in the mid to late 2000s and
at the John Deere, whatever it was, that was your first ever race.
Samstown 300. Yeah. Las Vegas. Again, I have a photographic memory of 2007. 26 Cup regulars, 26 and a half because Regan Smith was in the race as well. He was splitting the L1 with Mark Martin that year. But yeah, 26 and a half Cup drivers when you think about it in a field of 43. And again, I think I can acknowledge that it's better than it was. We're never going to go back to those days, I don't think. But I feel like at a certain point, that's always what my mentality has been. Either let them say, okay, I'm going to go all in for a championship, or ban them outright. And I think, and Josh Birch has been making this argument on this show for years. I think Brock wrote that op-ed a couple of years ago. I think maybe the time has come to consider an outright ban. And I am of the mindset, and I'm even going to be a little bit harsher than Brock is. I don't care if you are a Cup champion like Kyle Larson or a multi-time Cup champion like Kyle Busch. I don't care if you're making your Cup Series debut at the Daytona 500. If you are running for Cup points, I don't want you in the Xfinity Series. I don't want you in the Truck Series.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that, people make the argument about drivers gaining experience and things like that. And, the Xfinity drivers themselves say they enjoy having the Cup guys in the field. But I just go back to, again, since people seem to like stick and ball sports comparisons these days, how many NBA players, NBA superstars do you see dropping down to the G League? And I'll give the what's the word I'm looking for? The concession. I almost said confession there. I'll give the concession that there are some two-way players, that bounce back and forth, like Bronny James, for example, probably the most famous one doing it this year. Bounce back and forth between the G League team and the NBA team. But you're not going to see LeBron James go play for the South Bay Lakers, or a superstar like that drop down to their G League affiliate just for court time, so to speak, or to humble the young guys or embarrass them, to use the word that Kyle Larson used.
Yeah.
You don't see superstars in Major League Baseball drop down to their AA affiliate, aside from rare rehab sort of situations like that. And even then, I've always questioned, like, Bryce Harper came back from one a couple of years ago and like hit 2 home runs, and I'm like, okay, this guy seems ready to come back now. What are we doing here? And if you really want a motorsports comparison, it doesn't matter if you're Lewis Hamilton or Gabriel Bortoleto, who's a rookie this year. You're not going to see them in any F2 races later this season, or F3 races later this season. You're not going to see Scott Dixon or Alex Palou running any Indy Next races this year.
Or even Christian Lundgaard.
Yeah, or Christian Lundgaard or anybody.
Yeah.
I cannot think of any series or any sport really where the practice of major leaguers, guys at the top level, top echelon of the sport, so frequently run lower divisions. And it's not like it's just a motorsports thing. It's really, as far as I can figure, only NASCAR where this is such a common practice and such a hotly debated practice. It's something that would be seen as absurd anywhere else, but only in NASCAR do we have these arguments. And I understand that, there are some individual characteristics of our sport that make it make sense in some ways, but it still doesn't make any sense to me in other ways here. And I think, again, it just continues to take a spot in the field, take spotlight off of the series regulars, or take a spot in the field from a driver who would otherwise be in that car. And I know that, you're going to make the argument that the Hendrick 17 is an all-star car. I don't know. Raja Caruth got a couple starts in that car. Boris Said came back out in that car to run Sonoma last year. It hasn't exclusively been used for Hendrick's Cup Series lineup. So I don't know. I think we're at a point now where we've seen the Hendrick All-Star car come back here. I think, if anything, we're seeing more drivers continue to push the limits here of this 5-race cap. And I don't know, just always this time of year when we see Cup drivers using up their starts, and then we have to come on the Encore show and try to
talk about them.
Kyle Larson won an Xfinity race. Kyle Busch won a truck race. What more can you say about that at this point? Because I feel like I don't go quite as far as Brock to say they're start and win drivers. I think there have been instances where, Xfinity, well, like what Chandler Smith did this weekend, for example, right? I mean, it happens from time to time, and give credit where it's due to the regulars when they're able to beat the Cup guys. Like Brandon Jones did that last week at Darlington. I think it does say a lot about the regulars when they can do that. But then you have something like this. Like, imagine we could be talking about Carson Kvapil pulling into victory lane already with Junior Motorsports, and we can't, because Kyle Larson just absolutely dominated a race that, quite frankly, he should have dominated. And it makes it hard to come up with storylines to come out of that, because, what was expected is the reality here.
I have noticed one thing. I think the NASCAR Xfinity Series possibly has soft dropped the "names are made here" slogan from years past. Have you seen that around this year? I think they might have just quietly dropped that because they realized that doesn't really apply like it may have once for just a little while. And also, thank you, Joe, for another comment. But also, I think Kyle Larson is also like really used to going into fields where he schools the field. Like, he has a week full of dirt lined up all the time. And so, like, what's another series? What's another junior series to come in and take care of the field? What difference does it make to him?
Well, and this is the other counter argument. And Joe, bringing it up here, Xfinity and truck racing, mostly the same track as the Cup Series. I don't see the argument that star power is needed, and that's really the only times you see it nowadays. Because, again, just the logistics of, like, Milwaukee 2007, again, for example, Cup drivers flying back between Sonoma and Milwaukee, and Denny Hamlin missing the start of the race and then replacing Eric Almirola in the middle of the race. Like, of course, we're never going to see that again, just because, why would you use one of your 5 starts at a race where you have to go through all that trouble of making the nearly 2,000-mile trip back and forth? and these guys aren't running for points, they're not running for championships anymore. So I get all of that, but again, I look at the situation that we have here, making the argument that you need the Cup drivers in the field to draw interest when, first of all, I think the diehards are going to be at the races the entire weekend, regardless here. I think if anything, that argument holds more weight at standalone races, which again, I just made the point of why it doesn't make as much logistical sense to be a bushwhacker at those races anymore. But I will say this much, like what Kyle Larson does, racing dirt on weekdays and bringing some star power to local dirt tracks, I've got no problem with that. I think that's great. I think what Kevin Harvick did at Sonoma in 2017 and Kern in 2018, running what's now an ARCA West race. That's not a national touring series. That's not something that is on national television every single week. That's a series that needs more spotlight and attention. And Will Rogers certainly got that attention in 17 and 18. I'm not saying he needs to go run as many races as possible per year, but I think giving Cup drivers one race per year that they could do, I would be open to that idea. I have no problem with that whatsoever. It's the National Touring Series, Trucks and Xfinity, that are on TV every week, that are frequently at the same tracks as companion races to the Cup Series. I don't really buy the argument that you need to have Kyle Larson stinking up the show in a Hendrick Motorsports car, or Kyle Busch, way back when in a Gibbs car, winning almost every other race that he does. I don't buy the argument that puts more fans in the seats, or maybe it puts more sponsors on the race cars. And again, there's business aspects to that as well. But I just think in a perfect world, Cup Series drivers should focus on the Cup Series only. I don't think it's necessary to have them doing this in Trucks and Xfinity, even as little as 5 times a year. They simply don't need to be there, in my opinion.
Yeah. I had a thought there that escaped me, but I was ready for it.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Obviously, again, this is another, we could do a whole roundtable on this argument here. And again, if you are for the Kyle Larsons of the world racing in Xfinity, feel free to leave a comment in the chat and we can continue the conversation. Yeah, sure, Brandon, if you want to.
I remember another good example would be Dale Jr. Like you're crazy if you think Dale Jr. in a Cars Tour race at Florence or somewhere is not a good idea. Showing up in that. Yeah. But at the same token, Cars Tour is about to get get an FS1 appearance here soon. So in a way, it has a potential of becoming a national thing, but we're still in the baby stages of that. But the amount of haulers my wife and I saw in Darlington just for Dale Jr. Cars Tour apparel, like own hauler designated for it. And yeah, it's Dale Jr. is always big business, but but that's just another example I think of on the regional side of it's a good thing when Kevin and Keelan are in an event,
Yeah. And again, like Junior's Xfinity starts, he's not a full-time Cup driver anymore. Yeah. No problem
with Kane at Rockingham this Saturday.
Casey, so great to see Casey Kane back. Mm-hmm. They get much more feasible to do that. I say that Casey Mears is doing it in Cup right now, but he's in one of the only open cars in the field, one of the least funded cars in the field. Casey Kane's going to have, I think, a much better time running Xfinity than he is trying to put together a Cup deal like that. But Casey Mears is forging his own path, and good for him as well. Good to see him back out there.
He's getting those 500 starts.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like Justin Allgaier, for example. AJ Allmendinger, I know he's back in Cup now, but I have no problem with guys going back down to reinvent their careers. Kyle Busch wants to be the first to win titles in all 3 series. If Kyle Busch said, I'm not going to run any Cup races this year, at least not for points, I'm going to go all in on trucks, I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah.
In fact, I welcome it. I would love to see if his dominance could be sustained if he's running a full schedule on the Truck Series grind every weekend instead of just coming in a few times a year. I would love to see that happen.
I tell you one thing, you'd see Craftsman Truck Series tickets explode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Goodness gracious. That would be must-see events every part of the year.
Which, again, just going back to what I was saying at the start of this segment here, if you're going to do it, go all in, run as many races as you can, or run the full schedule. And I still remember, even as a kid, the 2010, 2011 offseason, hearing, drivers are going to have to choose which series they're running for points. And I remember thinking to myself, well, I don't know, is Carl Edwards going to choose, it's probably silly of me to be thinking this, of course, but would Carl Edwards choose to keep running nationwide? Because now he's basically going to have a free ticket to a championship if he's the only Cup driver doing this, or would Kyle Busch, choose to do it? And I think Joe Nemechek even did. I think Nemechek declared for nationwide points because his Cup team was a start and park operation at the time, so it made more sense for him to run the full nationwide races and tally up. I mean, not that he was a championship contender necessarily, but see where he could rank in Xfinity points over running 40th every week, just starting parking his Cup car. So, again, I think it's there's obviously a lot of layers to that discussion as well. I still think it should be score points in Cup or score points in both Xfinity or trucks, because that would prevent a Ross Chastain 2019 situation where you have to choose and then you ultimately realize I've chosen the wrong one and you have to change your declaration, and that was a whole mess and people were saying mixed feelings about that. But again, it's a conversation as old as time. I think we can leave it there for now, but it does come up by default on weekends like this when you have, and that was the other, just to put a bow on this conversation here. Kyle, my man, if you're going to do this, can you at least pull off the weekend sweep? Like, you came up one spot short in the truck race. If you're gonna stink up the show, at least do what you set out to do. This is twice now, and he's taken 2 out of 3 and just missed out on one of them. And I would tip my cap to him a little bit if he had gotten that achievement of being only the second driver ever to do it. But when he takes 2 out of 3, it's just like, well, man, you didn't even accomplish what you were really trying to go after this weekend. You got the hardest one, which is the Cup Series, and yet could only take 1 out of 2 between Xfinity and trucks. I don't know. That leaves me with mixed feelings as well. All right. Well, we have a very special guest to close out. Well, not completely close out, but move on to the final series recap, if you will, for the show tonight. Omi from Joshua Birch's JBM channel. He's been doing a lot of their Formula 2 and Formula 3 coverage this season so far. Josh was unable to make the show tonight. Omi also couldn't join us live, but he pre-recorded this segment for us earlier this afternoon. Here is his recap and his takeaway from the Formula 2 and Formula 3 rounds at Bahrain this past weekend.
Hello everyone, my name is Omi and I'm delighted to be talking you through Formula 3 and Formula 2's recap here on the Grid Encore show as well. Nikola Solov was the winner in what was a brilliant Formula 3 sprint race. That's exactly where we're going to start with Formula 3, and it was action-packed. It's one of the best sprint races that we saw in the category, and it was a great way to start off the season properly here at Bahrain International after getting it going in Australia. We had some brilliant racing, and that's exactly what was predicted. Over on JB Motorsports, we had an exclusive little clip of Chris McCarthy, the World Feed commentator, who told us about how this new car was going to properly come into action this weekend, and that was exactly the case. We were able to see how good the car is, and it's definitely an improvement on what we had last year, and we didn't really think it could get any better, but it somehow just did. So yes, as I mentioned, Solov took a record equaling 4th win, as the all-time record for wins in Formula 3 is 4, and he'll be looking to break that later on in the season. We had Freddie Slater making his debut in the category, and he was the driver who managed to get 2nd place. Now, he is an Italian F4 champion. Just for a little bit of context, he broke Antonelli's record in that series, and he is a driver who is regarded in the next Verstappen Hamilton type category as well, like how Antonelli was branded when he came up through the ranks as well. So that's the level that Freddie Slater is, and he immediately proved that after getting a 10th in qualifying, he was immediately able to get in there and fight with Solov. It was a great battle all the way through, and he just missed out. He tried to even go for the move at the last corner on the last lap, but it just was a little bit too short, and the Red Bull Junior was able to hold on to take the win. But Slater has shown us his talent, and he's going to be one to watch for the future for sure when he does get outings in the third AIX seat that isn't filled. They're just putting different drivers in depending on their schedules. Tuka Tappinen was the driver in 3rd, backed by the Ferrari Academy. Then it was Callum Woysen in 4th position for Rodin. Stenchorn was in 5th, and then it was Tim Traminitz in 6th position. Sandro Giusti, part of the Williams hold as well. He was in 7th. Christian Ho in 8th. Charlie Words was in 9th, and Noah Stromstead completed the top 10 for Trident in the sprint race, and Trident looking quick as well, just like they did in Australia. They continue that into Bahrain International, and we're going to hear more about them in the feature race later on as well. But Leon was just outside the top 10, not what Prema needed at all, as they are always one of the powerhouses when it comes to Formula 3. They weren't unfortunately able to get too many good results when it came to this weekend, and definitely they will be looking to bounce back when we head to Imola. That will be our next round in the category. Kamara was in 12th, and then it was Wharton in 13th, Louis Sharp in 14th. Boyer finished in 15th. Lawrence Van Hoopen was in 16th. And then it was Zagazeta to Sanapol into Pruvazak in 18th. Bruno Delpino in 19th. Roman Belinsky was in 20th position for Rodin Motorsport. And then we had Gerard G, who was directly ahead of Brando Badua, who is the son, of course, of Luca Badua. And then it was Javier Segura in 23rd. Loads of retirements when it came to the sprint race. That's how chaotic it was. Dufek retired. Dominguez retired. And then we had Ramos, Lecorte, Teofil Lyle, Ugo Gachukwu, Nicola Marin Angeli, who were also some of the retirement of what was a crazy sprint race, as we mentioned. Great battling, great action, and we also had plenty of safety cars, as I mentioned, which did mean that the whole field was bunched up, and we had a 2-lap shootout to decide the winners. I also want to give a little shout out to Rafa Kamara as well, who recovered all the way after stalling on the grid from 12th. He recovered all the way back to his starting position, and it was a brilliant job from the Trident man. Now we're going to look ahead to the feature race, the big race that takes place on Grand Prix Sunday, where we hand out the same points that they're given in Formula One. And it was Kamara who made it back-to-back feature race wins with a second win in the category. It was a brilliant performance from him. He had a bit of pressure from the man who finished in second, Callum Woisen. He got passed by Callum Woisen at the race start. Kamara brilliantly fighted back all the way through. And then it was some brilliant overtaking at the start. And then just pulling away and dominating from there. And he, of course, is part he's, of course, Brazilian. And Gabriel Bortoleto, when he arrived at this level 2 years ago, started his campaign as well by winning back-to-back feature races. So we can see the caliber of Kamara. He's topped practice in both Australia and Bahrain. He's topped qualifying in both Australia and Bahrain. And now he's also done the feature race. He is slightly cursed when it comes to sprint races, from what we can gather when it comes to our first 2 rounds of the season. But Kamara, he is going to be one to beat, and the field have a lot to come up with if they want to beat him this season. Callum Woisen, as I mentioned, was in second place. A good effort from him. But after Kamara was able to pull away, it was just a nice, easy race on his way to a second position, grabbing some decent points for Rodin. Tim Traminitz completed the podium positions, and he was a driver involved in quite a bit of battling. You had first and second, who were just high up the road, but from third downwards, it was quite a lot of fighting going on, and it was Traminitz who just got ahead and finished ahead of Tuka Tapin. And Nicholas Solov, of course, the driver who was the winner of the sprint race, was trying to fight his way through, and he was involved in a lot of battling with drivers like Stromstead, who finished directly behind in 6th, and then it was GSD, Boyer, Delpino, and Christian Ho, who was our top 10. Charlie Words was in 11th. Lawrence Van Hoopen was in 12th. And then Belinsky in 13th. Santiago Ramos, who started 30th for both races, with how Formula 3 and also Formula 2 qualifying works. If you are outside either 11th or outside in F2, or, for example, 13th or lower in Formula 3, then you start there for both races in the weekend. So Santiago Ramos found himself with a bad qualifying, meaning that he was all the way back there and had to recover, and he was able to do it to 14th position in this feature race. Teofil Null was directly in behind in 15th, and then it was Inter Pruvazak in 16th. Leon for Prema was in 17th ahead of Stenshorn in 18th, and then we had Dominguez in 19th, and Lecorte, part of the Alpine Academy, finished in 20th, and then we had Brando Badova in 21st, Joshua Dufek in 22nd, Louis Sharp finished in 23rd, and then it was Javier Segura in 24th, Marin Angeli finished in 25th, and then it was G, Ugo Chikuru, Wharton, Zagazeta, and it was very disappointing for Freddie Slater, the feature race, because due to a technical issue, he had to retire in the early stages. So a huge disappointment for the British driver. But what he was able to do this weekend was show his talent, was show his class. And we're definitely going to be seeing quite a bit from him in the future. Now, that was Formula 3 for everyone. We'll be back in this championship directly 1 week before the Indy 500, and that will be at Imola. So we really are looking forward to seeing how that category will go there. But we have a bit of waiting to do when it comes to Formula 3. But now we're going to move on to Formula 2. And it was very, very interesting once again when it came to the sprint race on Saturday. And that sprint race definitely had some of the wildest moments we've ever seen in Formula 2 ever since it's been running since 2017. Pepe Marti ended as the winner. From 11th on the grid, he made a double overtake on his way to the win, and there was so much going on. He made the move on the last lap as well. It was a race that went all the way down to the last lap. We had a safety car that completely changed the race up due to Esterson, who was the retirement, as you can see, in 20th on the results board. It completely changed the race, and it meant that Pepe Marti was able to fight her way through all the way to the race victory in what was an extraordinary finish. Rishaw was able to get second place, and he was able to make the move as well on the last lap, and he was able to get by around the outside of turn number 12, which was just absolutely fantastic to see. Now, the driver that would have been in third position originally was Joshua Dirksen, but he was disqualified from this sprint race, which means Dino Beganovic ended up in third. And Dino Beganovic is a driver who's got 2 podiums when it comes to the Formula 2 level, and both of them he finished in fourth, and he's been promoted due to a disqualification. In Abu Dhabi, when he got it in the sprint, it was due to a disqualification for Paul Aaron. This time around, it's due to Joshua Dirksen, but it does give him a podium place in P3. Oliver Goethe was in fourth, directly ahead of Arvid Lindblad, who's a hot prospect when it comes towards Formula One for the future with that outfit. Villagomez was one of our high contenders as well in both races, especially near the start. He really displayed some amazing driving when it came to the sprint race, especially near the start, as I mentioned. He was able to go on the attack and actually attack our top 2 drivers. So it was great to see Villagomez doing well compared to what we've been able to see from him in the past. Mini was in 7th, and then it was Fornaroli in 8th. Miata was in 9th, and Luke Browning completed the top 10. The top 8 score in a Formula 2 sprint race as well. Ambry Cordial was in 11th. Jack Crawford in 12th. Sammy Megatuni finished in 13th. Victor Martins was in 14th. And then Stanek in 15th. Miney was in 16th position. Bennett was directly ahead of Shields. And then it was Alex Dunn, who was really a driver who was going super late on the brakes to try and make some moves, and in this case, it was just a bit too over the top, and he even agreed with that it was just too much, and he definitely had to take a step back, which is going to be fantastic to talk about in a moment in terms of our feature race, which we'll do so in a second. But Alex Dunn, he was a driver who Pepe Marti and his engineer were joking about, that you're racing Alex Dunn, so be a bit careful. That was in the early stages of the race, but then later on after the safety car, Alex Dunn was going for some very late dive bombs. He was even doing it before the safety car, but especially increased when the opportunities were there even more. And it was a bit too late when he had incident and very nearly made contact with Fornaroli. And that would have been an incident which he would have straight lined if that really hit Fornaroli. So luckily, all was good. Fornaroli just about avoided, and Alex Dunn found himself in 19th. Now, Esterson, we referenced his name earlier on. He was the one who completely changed the race, and he was the one who gave Pepe Marti the chance to win, having started in 11th, and give us 5 laps of what was Formula 2's, some of its most chaotic racing we've ever seen since it started in 2017. Montoya was also retirement in 21st position, and of course, as we mentioned, Joshua Dirksen was disqualified from the race. Now we're going to move on to our feature race, and we mentioned that it would get a little bit more interesting for a certain P1 man, Alex Dunn, giving Ireland their first win in their category, and we were able to hear the Irish national anthem for the first time since 1999 on a Formula One weekend as well. It was great to see, and it was the first win as well for Alex Dunn in general on a Formula One weekend, as he only managed 2 podiums last year in Formula 3, so it was really, really great to see him being able to fight up and all the way to the top step. And also, especially considering what happened the day before, where he went for late dive bombs that weren't on, where he was hyper aggressive with everyone that he raced against. He was able to learn from that, admit that he was at fault when it came to that race, and then assess and see what he could do better in the feature race, having started in 4th. And he absolutely did so, being able to have a good start after some of the drivers ahead did not get the getaway that they were looking for. And Dunn was just able to pull away then and make the move, first of all, on Fornaroli, pull away and basically say goodbye for the rest of the race. The pit stop phase was navigated as well, and he just had the pace of everyone in that race, and it was quite surprising to see, and I'm sure loads weren't expecting it, but it's really nice to see some surprises, and especially from a driver who really was able to understand what happened yesterday and correct it, and it's great to see that correction happen in under 24 hours as well. Luke Browning was the big threat. He finished in 2nd. He was on the alternative strategy, and he was the driver who went on the charge late on, but the tires fell away and he wasn't able to chase down Dunn, but it's still a good 2nd place. Now, Leonardo Fornaroli, our pole sitter, the reigning Formula 3 champion, of course, just finishing ahead of Pepe Marti. That was a very great battle to watch on the last lap. There was a lot of people who were saying Fornaroli definitely was quite rough with his driving, but he was hyper aggressive to try keep that third position, and he was able to do so. Pepe Marti gave it his all, and that was a brilliant battle when it came to our last lap, which kind of took away from Alex Dunn's brilliant performance, and we were only able to look at it when we got out of the final corner rather than earlier on for what was a big moment in race 200 of the championship as well. This was the 200th race of Formula 2, and it was definitely one which had history, and it was great to see Alex Dunn picking up that win. But we'll go back to where we were, and that was Victor Martins in 5th. Vishal was able to get P6. Beganovic was in 7th, and it was Arvid Lindblad in 8th position ahead of Mini. Derksen was able to get 10th in this race, and then it was Goethe in 11th, Villagomez in 12th, Cordial in 13th, Miata was in 14th, and then Megatunif was ahead of Jack Crawford, the American, finishing in P16, and then it was Stanek, Maney, Montoya, Bennett, and then Esterson and Shields. That was our order when it came to our feature race, and these drivers don't have long to wait till they go racing, as they're going to do so this week around the Jeddah Corniche circuit. So we cannot wait to see how the battle is going to go there and who's going to emerge in front, because it looks like it's an unpredictable Formula 2 season, and combined with that, we've seen some fantastic racing when it's come to every Formula 2 race that we've held since 2021 at Jeddah. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but Bahrain was definitely one of the thrillers of the Formula 2 season. We always love it when we come here, and it was great to see how the action unfolded. We had history, of course, as I mentioned, with race 200, and also a win for Alex Dunn. And then in the sprint race, we just had one of the most wildest Formula 2 races we've ever seen as well. So a great weekend for Formula 2 and a great weekend for Formula 3 as well. Fantastic racing. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Formula 2 can do in Jeddah and Formula 3 when it returns at Imola.
All right. Thank you to Omi for that. And as he said, not much longer to wait. F2 will be back on the track at Saudi Arabia this weekend as a support race for the F1 Grand Prix. So we'll bring you more coverage on what happens there next week. In the meantime, let's close out our show for tonight. Brandon, what is your one shining moment from this weekend in motorsports?
If you don't mind, I have two shining moments,
Sure.
But they're very, very, very quick. The first one is the Saturday grandstands for Rockingham Speedway are sold out. Exciting news. Also expected news. They better be, but it's still reassuring nonetheless that the Xfinity race will have a sold out crowd, and hopefully we'll keep that place rocking. No pun intended. And maybe there'll be grounds for opening up the back straightaway grandstands again, or putting them back in place. Who knows where this trail could lead. I'm really curious to see how the racing will be at Rockingham. From the test, though, that we had earlier this year, it sounds like it's going to be very, very exciting to see. And also, this towel here next to me is going to have to be updated here, because the title sponsor for Nashville Super Speedway's weekend for the Cup Series has been updated this past week to the Cracker Barrel 400. So a return to Cracker Barrel into the sport. And it's so fitting because in 1969, Cracker Barrel was founded in Lebanon, Tennessee, where the track sits in Wilson County. So a lot of cool news as far as Rockingham, and also the title sponsor. I mean, Ally was great. They did what they had to do to start out the revitalization of Nashville Super Speedway, and thankful for all that they've done. But this is a cool new chapter, and it's so much, in my opinion, much more fitting for this area for Cracker Barrel to be back in the sport at Nashville.
Great news indeed, and who knows? The Cup Series is racing in North Wilkesboro again for the All-Star race. Maybe if this weekend goes well, you might hear some momentum potentially brewing to bring the Cup Series back to Rockingham one day. You just never know. So if you want to see that happen, I guess it's too late for this year. If it's sold out, maybe you can get them on the resale market. I don't know, but great to see that there'll be a great crowd, people going out there and actually putting their money where their mouth is and attending the race at Rockingham this weekend. That is great to see and great to hear. One thing that I neglected to mention during our Truck Series recap, I want to give a shout out to Raja Karuth. 9th place. I'm sure he would have liked to finish a little bit higher, but he got set back, went on an alternate strategy, and then held off pretty much everybody on old tires, holding the lead for probably, I think, 50 or 60 laps it was, if I recall correctly. But certainly a lot longer than I think a lot of people were predicting he'd be able to. So well done to him, and he comes away still with a solid top 10. That is more than enough to warrant a one shining moment, in my opinion. So I will give it to him as we close out the show tonight. And that is going to do it for us here once again on the Encore show. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and be sure to follow us at Grid Network TV on all social media, whatever microblogging platform you're on, whether that's X/Twitter, Threads, or Blue Sky. We are on all three. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, and of course, the most important thing, subscribe to us right here on the YouTube channel, and visit our recently relaunched website at gridnetworktv.com as well. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take a few minutes after the show to consider joining our Patreon. Join Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in Grid Network to help us continue to expand our coverage here at this motorsports media outlet. If you want to make a regular contribution to our channel, you can also become a member through the YouTube channel itself, or if you'd rather make a one-time contribution instead, you can use the Super Chat or Super Thanks option, or you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below. Any amount helps us continue to grow what we're trying to build here at the Grid Network. Now, looking ahead at our upcoming schedule on Wednesday, as always, Kobe Lambeth will be back with Josh Birch and Matt White for Grid Tonight to bring you all the latest motorsports news. No NASCAR pre-race show this weekend. Of course, it's Easter Sunday, so that will be off. But of course, Formula One back in action at Saudi Arabia with F2 and F1 Academy as well. So stay tuned. Maybe something for women in motorsports coming up later this week as well. And then pre-race and wrap-up shows to follow for Saudi Arabia. And then we should be back on the air next week. We'll see if we can get Omi back or Josh or Jess or somebody for the Formula 2 recap. But on that note, Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off for the evening here?
Yeah, enjoy Easter Sunday and also Rockingham on Saturday and Friday. One more thing, forgot to mention too. Tony Stewart winning the Vegas 4-Wide Nationals in Top Fuel. You had that? Is that you?
That's all. Yeah,
go ahead.
That's great. You see that?
Yeah, go ahead, take it.
No, well, I was just going to mention it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, he just add that to another piece moment. Of. Yeah. Add that to another discipline that Tony Stewart has found victory lane in. So, big congratulations to Tony Stewart there.
I'm gonna see if I can find the tweet now. I think NASCAR Man was just listing off every series that Tony has won in now in his career.
Mike Joy said, "quote Nobody's invented a race car Tony Stewart can't win in."
That's exactly right. Tony Stewart. Yeah, this is from NASCAR Man. Tony Stewart. On X/Twitter, that is. Tony Stewart's win in NHRA Top Fuel today adds an additional achievement to the most diverse win list in racing. Put a goat emoji there and says Stewart has won in NASCAR Cup, NASCAR Xfinity, NASCAR Truck, ARCA, IndyCar, Sprint Car, Midgets, Silver Crown, IROC, SRX, NHRA Top Fuel Dragster, NHRA Top Alcohol.
He even invented a new car so he could win in it.
Yeah.
With Ray Evernham.
SRX, there you go, yeah. Yeah, very impressive list. Very impressive from Tony Stewart this weekend as well. Shout out to him. And I just want to say shout out to the sports teams and the athletes that I happen to be a fan of. Roy McIlroy, kudos to you. You tried your hardest there. Gave me took about 2 years off of my life watching that final round in a 2-hour span there, thinking that, this is finally going to be it. And then is this going to be another choke artist performance here? But who cares at this point? You got it done. Grand Slam. Only the 6th ever golfer to do that. Congratulations. And just thinking about it, Brandon, in the last 2 months, my Philadelphia Eagles win the Super Bowl. The Yukon Huskies women's basketball team won a national championship. The Florida Gators men's basketball team won a national championship. And I just capped it off with the guy that I've been watching for 10 years trying to capture his career Grand Slam, Roy McIlroy, conquering Augusta and winning the Masters. I guess we might as well start planning the Phillies World Series parade.
I was about to say it. The Phillies are winning the World Series now, and I couldn't be more upset. My day is ruined.
Well, might be a little bit premature with how the offense looks right now. I think we need to.
The Braves don't seem like they're going to be anywhere in the picture, but I mean it's April, but still doesn't look too good.
162 game schedule, long way to go before I think we have a good idea of what the locks are going to be. But
my October hats are ready for this show whenever that time comes.
Yep. Well, we were talking on the show earlier, the comparison that Pete Pistone brought up. Everybody thought the Dodgers were going to win 120 games this year, and they got shut out 16-0 the other night. So baseball's a funny sport sometimes. You just never know. We'll keep our eye on that, and we'll keep our eye on all the series that we regularly cover here on the Encore show as we continue to go forward. A lot more racing still left in 2025 as well, so a long way to go for us, and we'll be here with you every step of the way. For Brandon Crossland, for Omi from Joshua Birch Motorsports, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Ben Schneider. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time Have a good rest of your week, everybody.